Welcome, all you beautiful people. This, the priority of life. 1 week after the Las Vegas shootings, I am locked inside a dark room at the Cache County Jail. Country music plays from an unseen source. Uniforms hang on pegs, an outdated calendar posted nearby. On a worn pleather couch, I sit with Megs, my partner this week for the meditation classes I help facilitate for the female inmates. Out the bank of windows that open onto the hall, and through the steel set windows on the other side, I watch prisoners move about in their wedge-shaped pods. Some rest in their beds, thin mattresses, sheeted, white like the walls, while others pace in their plain jumpsuits. No windows to the outside, no wall art. The harsh fluorescent lighting never goes off. Blue is the new black in Logan, Utah, and here the day never ends. You're not safe, the guard said as we walked down the hallway to the classroom. A handcuffed inmate held by 2 guards was being pushed into a room while another inmate carried his balled possessions down the hall, flanked by guards made larger by the guns at their sides. Shouts came from mouths we could not see. "We need you in here." She had showed us the couch, the one facing a row of computers, where guards presumably sat to watch the cameras, the prisoners, reruns of Duck Dynasty. To the side of one screen, the one filled with gridded squares, eyeing every corner of the jail, sat a boulder-sized Bidgle, lettering faded from use. When the guard left us, she locked the door behind. Now from the inside of Foucault's panopticon, we look out at those held in. "Don't let Nevada be excuse to disarm us," reads the website left open. We sit in darkness. 2 weeks after the shootings, I am running down the road in the morning dark. No moon, no lamplight. Black like the sky above, the pavement only exists beneath my feet through faith. I see little before me. The occasional shooting star streaks across the sky, so very bright in the cloak of dark that I squint. Early fall in Logan brings cold temperatures and the smell of fallen leaves. My mind prioritizes my day, the done and the undone, removing me from my footfalls and my run. I hear the cry at the same moment that I instinctively leap the black lump on the road. The sound comes from the ground, the clear call of an animal in pain. I continue on. Each stride takes me further from what can only be a cat who has been hit by a car. Unable to flee my stride, it calls to me instead. I try to make myself turn around and then reason against the action. How could I carry it home to the vet, to its owner? When I reach the hill at the midpoint of my run, I welcome the pounding in my lungs, the seizing in my throat. It's just like crying. I'd like to say that when Megs and I finally made it to the classroom to sit with the women who came for meditation, we created a profound space of healing, but not that day. That day, 2 of the women fidgeted, complained. One refused to close her eyes. 2 chirped and giggled as I led them on a guided meditation, where I invited them to envision the fluorescent lights above us as the sun, warming the crowns of our heads. But the sun doesn't buzz, and the jail is kept cold. Even my own mind refused to quiet and still. I'd like to say that as I circled back toward home that morning and past the place in the road where the cat had cried out, I no longer saw a lump and instead heard a meow from the field of corn nearby. But it was a hawk I heard, not a cat, and I refused to look at the ground. In the jail orientation, we are told that the officers have sworn to give their life to save us, the civilians, first. Second themselves, then the suspects or inmates. This, the priority of life. In fact, we are warned, we put the officers at risk every time we come. With all that light, fluorescent rods seething 24 hours a day, you would think the ability to discern whom to save and how would be readily apparent. Yet I left a cat to die, and those shooting stars, rocks. Thank you very much for being here tonight. My name is Jennifer Seiner, and I'm a creative writer and a professor of English at the university. This semester, I had the great good fortune of teaching a special topics class for creative writers. Many of them explored different kinds of performance projects, and part of that included video poetry projects. And those are the 4 that we're going to watch tonight. I want to say before we begin that we are grateful for this space, for the library's willingness and generosity in hosting us, and for Star Kohlberg in particular, her beautiful grace and guidance, not just tonight, but every other Tuesday and Thursday for over 10 years. It's a remarkable commitment to the community and to poetry and to art. So thank you to Star and the Writing Center. I also want to thank Weston for videoing tonight. When we get to open mic, if there is somebody that would like to read but doesn't want to be videoed, you can just let Weston know. And please do sign up for open mic. Lastly, I want to let you know that next week, or no, not next week, a while from now, December 6th, so after Thanksgiving, Michael Sauter's poetry class, his advanced poetry class, is going to be reading here on December the 6th at 7. So I hope you can be there then. So in 2018, the National Endowment of the Arts released a study that indicated that the number of adult Americans who read poetry has nearly doubled in recent years, bringing us to a 15-year high. So in 2012, 6.7% of adult Americans surveyed had read poetry in the previous year, but by 2017, that number had jumped to 11.7%. The rise has been linked to social media, but many are saying really that rise in poetry and into art, into word as art, so literature, that rise in readership is directly related to movements and activism. So the poet Jane Hirschfeld told the New York Times last year, quote, "When poetry is a backwater, it means times are okay. When times are dire, that's exactly when poetry is needed." So maybe thinking about this rise in poetry to a need, maybe not expressed, but sort of felt that things are dire and art can save us. So with that in mind, one of the options that my students had was to create these video poems. The parameters were pretty broad. They were to use poetry and combine it with image. You're going to see 4 different ways of entering that assignment. Okay, so we are going to begin with Mark Smeltzer. He's going to be the first one. I do need to give a trigger warning for his video. There is violence in the video. And so if that is something that is going to be hard for you to watch, you might want to step out of the room for the first video. Otherwise, we're just going to move ahead. Good? Don't forget to sign up for open mic. Okay. All right, Mark. Yeah, let's turn the lights off. What about that? Wait. Wait.
He was sitting in the car, seat belted. I told him, "That's your license." And then told me he had a firearm. I told him not to reach for it. And when he went down to grab, I told him not to reach for it. And then he kept it right there. And I told him to take his hands off of it. And then he had his grip a lot wider than a wallet. And I don't know where the gun was. He didn't tell me where the gun was. And then it was just getting hanky. He was just staring straight ahead, and I was getting nervous. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out! I wasn't! Go on! Oh, man.
And when they go to the car and see a black male face, they get nervous and they get scared, and many of them panic. In this particular
Whose
case,
fault
this
is
man
that?
got off.
I knew whatever was in front of me was happening, and then the police vehicle came to a screeching halt in front of me, like they were setting up a blockade. Everywhere were flashes, a siren sounding, and a stretched-out roar. Get on the ground. Get on the ground now. Then I just knew. And you are not the guy, and still you fit the description because there is only one guy who was always the guy fitting the description. I left my client's house knowing I would be pulled over. I knew. I just knew. I opened my briefcase on the passenger seat, just so they could see. Yes, officer rolled around on my tongue, which grew out of a bell that could never ring, because its emergency was a tolling I was meant to swallow. In a landscape drawn from an ocean bed, you can't drive yourself sane. So angry you're crying. You can't drive yourself sane. This motion wears a guy out. Our motion is wearing you out, and still you are not that guy. Then flashes, a siren, a stretched out roar, and you are not the guy, and still you fit the description because there is only one guy who was always the guy fitting the description. Get on the ground. Get on the ground now. I must have been speeding. No, you weren't speeding. I wasn't speeding? You didn't do anything wrong. Then why are you pulling me over? Why am I pulled over? Put your hands where they can be seen. Put your hands in the air. Put your hands up. Then you are stretched out on the hood. Then cuffed. Get on the ground now. Each time it begins in the same way. It doesn't begin the same way. Each time it begins it's the same. Flashes, a siren, the stretched out roar. Maybe because home was a hood the officer could not afford. Not that a reason was needed. I was pulled out of my vehicle a block from my door, handcuffed and pushed into the police vehicle's back seat, the officer's knee pressing into my collarbone. The officer's warm breath vacating a face creased into the smile of its own private joke. Each time it begins in the same way. It doesn't begin the same way. Each time it begins, it's the same. Go ahead and hit me, motherfucker, fled my lips, and the officer did not need to hit me. The officer did not need anything from me except the look on my face on the drive across town. You can't drive yourself sane. You are not insane. Our motion is wearing you out. You are not the guy. This is what it looks like. You know this is wrong. This is not what it looks like. You need to be quiet. This is wrong. You need to close your mouth now. This is what it looks like. Why are you talking if you haven't done anything wrong? And you are not the guy, and still you fit the description because there is only one guy who is always the guy fitting the description. In a landscape drawn from an ocean bed, you can't drive yourself sane. So angry you can't drive yourself sane. The charge the officer decided on was exhibition of speed. I was told, after the fingerprinting, to stand naked. I stood naked. It was only then I was instructed to dress, to leave, to walk all those miles back home. And still you are not the guy, and still you fit the description because there is only one guy who was always the guy fitting the description.
We in the back seat of the police car. I can't really do shit because they got me handcuffed.
It's okay, Mommy.
I can't believe they just did this. I'm fucking ah!
It's okay, I'm right here with you.
illustrations if you want of Mark and all the other the students in the class. We started really down. It's gonna go up, so
It has to.
yeah, it has to go up. That's rough. Okay. So JR, are you next? Where's JR? You're not next. Who's next? Adrian? All right, Adrian's next. Adrian Thompson's videos are next. The first video is you'll see some illustrations, and I wanted you to know that those were all done by Adrian. And then you'll see the second one too. Okay.
She sweeps with many colored brooms and leaves the shreds behind. O housewife in the evening west, come back and dust the pond. You dropped a purple raveling in. You dropped an amber thread, and now you've littered all the east with duds of emerald. And still she plies her spotted brooms, and still the aprons fly, till brooms fade softly into stars. And then I come away. Out of the gray steel of imagination, akebi vines entwine the clouds, wild rose bush, hummus marsh, everywhere, everywhere, such designs of arrogance, when more busily than noon woodwind music, amber fragments pour down. How bitter, how blue is the anger. At the bottom of the light in April's atmospheric strata, spitting, gnashing, pacing back and forth, I am Asura incarnate. The landscape sways in my tears. Shattered clouds to the limit of visibility in heaven's sea of splendor. Sacred crystalline winds sweep. Spring's row of Zypressin absorbs ether, black at its dark feet. The snow ridge of Tian Shan glitters, waves of heat haze and white polarization, yet the true words are lost. The clouds, torn, fly through the sky. In Buddhist belief, all living things are reborn in one of the 6 worlds, including the realm of asuras, demons born out of arrogance who roam the sky or the bottom of the sea, seeking retribution through anointment into Buddhahood.
Spring and Asura. Spring and chaos.
At the bottom of the brilliant April, gnashing, burning, going back and forth, I am Asura incarnate. Chalcedonous clouds flow. Where does he sing, that spring bird? The sun shimmers blue, Asura in forest, one music, and from heaven's bowl that caves in and dazzles, throngs of trees, like calamities extend, branches sadly proliferating, all landscapes twofold, treetops faint, and from them a crow flashes up when the atmospheric strata become clearer, and cypresses, hushed, rise in heaven. Someone coming through the gold of grassland, someone casually assuming a human form, in rags, and looking at me, a farmer. Does he really see me? At the bottom of the sea of blinding atmospheric strata, the sorrow blue, blue and deep, Zypressin sway gently. The bird severs the blue sky again. The true words are not here. Asura's tears fall on the earth. Tian Shan, the heavenly mountains of China, fed the flow of Buddhism to the east, and in mythology were thought to rest upon the clouds, in a true paradise, home to the Dijiang, the scarlet, four-winged, six-legged, headless bird of paradise. As I breathe the sky anew, lungs contract faintly white, body scatter in the dust of the sky. The top of a ginkgo tree glitters again, the Zypressin darker. Sparks of the clouds pour down.
Spring and Asura. Spring and chaos.
Oh, dreary life, we cry, oh, dreary life. And still the generations of the birds sing through our sighing, and the flocks and herds serenely live, while we are keeping strife with heaven's true purpose in us as a knife against which we may struggle. Ocean girds and slackened the dry land, Savannah sward's unweary sweep, hills watch unworn, and rife meek leaves drop yearly from the forest trees to show above the unwasted stars that pass in their old glory. O thou God of old, grant me some smaller grace than comes to these, but so much patience as a blade of grass grows by contended through the heat and cold. The snow is deep on the ground. Always the light falls softly down on the hair of my beloved. This is a good world. The war has failed. God shall not forget us. Who made the snow waits where love is. Only a few go mad. The sky moves in its whiteness, like the withered hand of an old king. God shall not forget us. Who made the sky knows of our love. The snow is beautiful on the ground, and always the lights of heaven glow softly down on the hair of my beloved. Love is an interruption or an aberration, a force in opposition to the ultimate inertia of the universe, wrote Margaret Duras. Whether or not it is worth it, it occurs. Whether or not it is to be believed, it is. The wind moves us without a frond being needed to be held by a slave girl. The rudiments of sentences are ancient, without a mouth needing to remember what it is losing as it lets those words out. Something eviler than what they even mean right now. Something too evil to be known right now. Or ever. I feel sure that even the most culpable people have other qualities secreted away, adjusting their garments in light of fate. He turned his head upward. He looked up the white wall. The light from the lamp could be light coming from a great distance. It could be a great distance away, and the wall could be snow. It is so beautiful, he said. His head looking up the wall, his eyes looking up it. He said, that nail in the wall could also be beautiful, for so far away. In beauty bright, and such it was, like Blake's lily, and though an angel, he looked absurd, dragging a lily out of a beauty-bright store, wrapped in tissue, with the petal drooping. Nor was it useless. You who know it know how useful it is, and how he would be dead in a minute if he were to lose it. Though how do you lose a lily? His lily was white, and he had a foolish smile there, holding it up like a candelabrum, in his right hand, facing the mirror in the hall. Nor had the endless centuries started yet. Nor was there one thorn between his small house and the beauty-bright store.
And so then the final one is Brian Welch's, and the only thing you need to know about his, there is actually one image that could be a little bit disturbing. It's toward the end of the piece. And then the poet is Naomi Shihab Nye. That's whose poem is being read.
Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and what kindness really saved, all this must go. Before you know what kindness really is, landscape can be, you must lose things. Between the regions of kindness, feel the future dissolve in a moment. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The past held in your hand, amazing chicken, that you counted and was carefully saved. All this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be. Between the regions of kindness, between the regions of kindness, how you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out of the window forever.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing?
My name is Christine Blasey Ford. I am a professor of psychology at Palo Alto University and a research psychologist at the Stanford University School of Medicine. I am here today not because I want to be. I am terrified.
This is my statement.
I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school.
Her longtime friend, Miss Kaiser, said under penalty of felony that she does not know me.
I understand and appreciate the importance of your hearing from me directly about what happened to me and the impact that it has had on my life.
Quote, simply put, Miss Kaiser does not know Mr. Kavanaugh, and she has no recollection of ever being at a party or gathering where he was present, with or without Dr. Ford. End quote.
We did not know each other well, but I knew him and he knew me.
All 4 people allegedly at the event, including Dr. Ford's longtime friend, Miss Kaiser, have said they recall no such event.
I truly wish I could be more helpful with more detailed answers to all of the questions that have and will be asked about how I got to the party and where it took place and so forth. I don't have all the answers, and I don't remember as much as I would like to. But the details about that night that bring me here today are the ones I will never forget.
I know that any kind of investigation, Senate, FBI, Montgomery County Police, whatever, will clear me.
So memory is something that in the last generation, psychologists have spent an enormous, and neurologists have spent an enormous time, amount of work and effort trying to understand how it works. And the more we learn about memory, the more we realize how fallible it is. And when we systematically go back and we test our memories, we find they don't do very well. These are just facts of human memory. And we so often want to make someone's faulty memory into a test of their character, and I think that's a mistake. It's there are people who deliberately lie, absolutely, but a lot of what we think might be deliberate lying is just a manifestation of the frailty of human memory.
So I really don't want to get into politics on this, but I do want to ask you this question to see if the way when I finished with the hearings last week, I felt, okay, I think she believes that, and it may have happened that way. I don't know. And I felt Brett Kavanaugh, I believe he believes that. They both could be telling the absolute truth, correct?
Yeah, yes. They both, I don't think either of them are deliberately lying. I think, the thing about memory is that we may honestly believe that this is what happened, even though it isn't. One of the most important things that memory researchers will tell you is you cannot confuse confidence with accuracy. In other words, the fact that I am absolutely certain that what happened is not a reliable guide to its accuracy.
Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans, and the simple breath that kept him alive. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans, and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow. You must know sorrow, deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it kindness till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you must know the size of the cloth, the other deepest thing. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. You must only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day. You must know sorrow. Only kindness that raises its head kindness that makes sense to say it is I. Only kindness that ties your shoes is I, and then goes with you everywhere. You must know sorrow. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say it is I you have been looking for, and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
What they created?
I want somebody to talk about this idea of atmosphere, because poetry is all atmospheres. It's so deep, and these poems, I think, for me, it felt like everyone in this room was just holding their breath. They were really visceral. So what about that atmosphere? How do you go about creating something like that? How much of your emotion do you put in, and what do you want to impart with this atmosphere?
I can answer for me. So
Mark is the one that did the first video.
so I read from Claudia Rankin's Citizen. And her book / poetry was very intense and a lot of times violent, but also very sedating to me, because that's the attitude that she perceives when we reflect on these acts of violence against African Americans. So I wanted that to reflect in the video, because a lot of times we show these acts of violence in rapid succession with a lot of violent music and imagery, and it tends to go very quickly in our minds. So I wanted to slow it down and reflect the sort of slow, tranquilizing feeling that we tend to get when these things happen every other day in America. And that's why I also chose the music that I did. I didn't want it to be really exciting, violent music. All I wanted was to make sure that we felt the kind of slow, tranquilizing defeat that a lot of African Americans feel when they see these kinds of things and they already know what's going to happen at the end of the video. So that's how I did mine.
Others?
I suppose mine were bolstered by the emotion that I sort of felt upon reading the poems for the first time. I just tried to, with the video, with the use of the visual element, like just recreate what I imagined as I was reading it, and recapture the moment I first read Kenji Miyazawa's poem, which was a morning, and upon exiting the house that morning, the clouds were under the mountains as they were actually last fall, and I managed to capture another moment like that this fall. So that was very special, and it was all filmed in succession of one walk, and there was so many special things on that walk that you don't usually see on campus, such as the unicycle, the dog, things like that. Just the world pretty and bright and clean from the rains and things. So I think that helped a lot. And for the other one, Emily Dickinson's description of nature personified is now a real housewife mixing up her husband, who is a magician's potions and things, and making a mess of everything. And so just a change of what you would originally think by viewing the poem or hearing it read through the visual element helped me harness what I wanted to say.
All right, thank you so much for your attention and your presence and being here tonight for those presentations. So we are going to move into open mic night, or the open mic part of the night, but we don't have very many people signed up. So what's that all about? We need some people on our clipboard, which is gone. Here's the clipboard. We literally only have 3 people. We have 4 people. We have 5 people. Yeah, we have 5 people. He's rejecting the call. He's a good poet. There's 5 people.
Thank you.
So we'll start with the first 3.
Do I need to put my emails? Okay, it's just my name.
It looks like our first reader is going to be Cameron. Is Cameron around? Yes. Cameron is here. Then Lexi. Is Lexi here? Excellent. And then Ronald. Ronald I saw earlier. Here still. Okay. So Cameron, you're up. You're first.
Go Cameron. I'm not even a poet. You go.
Can I
just stand right here.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, my name's Cameron. I go to Utah State. I'm actually like a political science major, but I'm taking poetry writing right now, and I really enjoy it. So I thought I would read one of my poems. It's pretty short. It's entitled Morality. Excuse me one second. High-pitched yelping shoots me from under my covers, the wet grass pricking the bottom of my feet. Smack, another yelp follows from the neighbor's backyard. Shuffling to the fence with freezing cold feet, my eyes see a young black lab. Quivering and whimpering, its helpless gaze meets mine. Through the darkness, a 2x4 raises silently and targets the pup's skull. Rage reheats my feet. I feel a firm grasp and turn to find a scowling woman, eyes as black as the dog's fur. Help him, I scream at the woman. This is not right. How would you know, she hisses, you don't have a dog in this fight.
Hi. I wrote a series of 4 short poems about my grandma. She had a really awful childhood and she didn't let it make her into a really crummy person. And so that's basically what these are about. Part 1. She braids her dancing spirals smooth with fingers holding memory. Handmade heart, her mother's eye is a summary. To bend, to weed, to wash, to reach that perfect peach. Beyond the grace of patchwork smiles whose pink suffuses laundry carts, infinite piles, their centers drift and sag apart. Yet once she rinses all her miles of tattered heart, red dye releases, and then the fraying all but ceases. Part 2. She stops to grasp 1,000 hands that wave green-gloved hellos from the earth, then pulls them fresh out of entangled dirt. She stands and creamy bulbs extend from the sugar plants. Her hair holds sun-breathed photons, white exhales on each strand. She is reaching, nearly there, all her fingers touching sky. Part 3. Adorned with crowns from in her dreams of plastic gems and ribbons gleaming, with loving moms they fill each aisle, those little girls with royal smiles. And they are budding pink and teeming with praise for each freckle that piles on and on their plum silk cheeks, and their pearl-tipped nails say care and matter. She is searching shelves for each banana bouquet, plastic bags in both her hands, while the soft smells bananas leave fill her with hush and rest. Warm words for others' ears can in her burn. Her heart is lost in chest, to matter. The words, they rise like breath. Part 4. She wraps each girl in linen heart she spun and wove herself. They tilt like grass in all its chlorophyll, with smiles that gild their lips like crowns. Moth-colored lashes part the air and comb strands from each spur of dandelion laughs that spill their cellulose in whitish trills. They feather in the wind like clouds. She is queen of forgotten hearts, proud to gather wandering and chilled tempters of light. Her arms have raised kingdoms far above themselves, on gold hills soft as baby hair, and marvelous as gems, wings of milk white, all tangled butterfly scales with strings of sun. That's all.
Oh, women, I know I have my weaknesses. I'm not the perfect man. But I hope when you meet me, you'll take me as I am. I hope I can give you all the love you deserve. I hope to be the husband you'd be glad to serve. Oh, woman, wherever you are, I'm waiting to be a bright star. And when it seems I'm married, this isn't quite complete. I'm rocking the pitter-patter of a baby's little feet. If we kiss at anything, I have a kid in my school, I'm a student of them. There's beer jewels. Oh women, wherever you are, I'm waiting to be a bright star. And when the kids will go, and they've all moved away, I hope I'll ever go until our dying days. And when this life was through, after all that we gave, I hope our love continues beyond the earthly graves. Because we work out like the wind. I remember back in school, and I thought your hair was like the wind. It was so fair. I thought your eyes were so beautiful. You were like the sun. I thought you'd be my gal. Be a lot of fun. Like the wind, you carried me away from my growing up to the present day. Like the wind, I'll always be there to blow you up from year to year. Then years went by, and you fell for me. And when the time was right, I went down on my knee. Now we're married. After all this time, I started to write the song saying, God, you're mine. Like the wind, you carried me away from my growing up to the present day. Like the wind, I'll always be there to blow you up from year to year.
Thank you to Cameron, Lexi, and Ron. That was wonderful. We only have 2 more readers. Aha, see, I just got to stand here a little longer. We only have 3 more readers. Yes. We only have 4 more readers. Oh, you're gonna...
There's a tentative, like, finger in the air. I don't know the rules. What are the rules?
They're not many. It's uncensored and 7 minutes.
All right.
Is your max.
All right.
So you're in? Okay, I'm gonna have you guys sign up. See if the poet in the back is gonna sign up. Right now we've got Tim, Chuck, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, Tim, then Chuck, then Isaac. So Tim, is it Tim? Tim, oh, Tim!
Thank you. I'm just gonna enunciate. So I didn't really come super duper prepared, but there's something that I wrote a couple months back that I was a big fan of. You can record it if you want to. And it doesn't rhyme, so apologies in advance. I seem to recall a not so distant past whose sentiments are echoed in current events. Yet for all of my walls and all of my barriers that I have so meticulously constructed, I find myself locked, again in a challenge of wits with my own emotional intellect. I can't seem to discern that's what will make me happy, as the journey must necessarily be layered brick by brick, constructed with all of the failed romances and achings of the heart through which I've earnestly tried to patiently endure. But for all that I have learned, I feel weaker, faded almost. It's as though with each new person into whom I invest my time, energy, and love takes a shade of my being when they depart. Each becomes a vestige of what could have been, and a consistently sharp reminder to me of what wasn't meant to be, all leading to the question, was it me? I figure that at the end of all things, such as the rhyme and reason of progress, each metaphysical foot advancing upon the next, a constant chain within which each subsequent link is unlocked by the blood and toil of its predecessor. In an ironic twist of perceived fate, that with which had thus made me weak has resulted in a newfound strength, not that born of repetition, but that of experienced understanding, as a seasoned veteran of an age-old conflict. My heart bleeds a dark red shade of anger, turned sleek gray by a pale rush of concurrent confusion. Perhaps I am simply not emotionally mature enough to accurately process the nature of this circumstance, and perhaps it'd be dangerous to pursue even if I were. I am a prime example of the duality of human nature, so prone to assume that all that which does not fall in our favor must necessarily be plotting against us, that those for whom we care deeply are truly our deepest and darkest insecurities. Yet is it not true that we bleed the same crimson? It is human to love. After all, love is the most perfectly imperfect and complex things our minds are capable of computing. It is the most natural yet irrational function of our existence, and yet is as essential to our well-being as water is to sustaining life. It is for this reason that we are doomed to be ever locked in a struggle we cannot overcome with ourselves, caught in the crossfire of the classic dichotomy of the emotion and intellect. Tell me again, what is it that you understand about love? What is it that pushes you to connect with your peers? What drives your very being to push onward? Are you truly motivated by love, or is it that you are just scared of being alone? You cannot tell me that you do not feel it. Like a thick curtain drawn over our self-constructed veil of stars, and at the end of it all, through Through shattered rose-tinted spectacles, you look at the broken image of us and dare to say it's just how things are. After all the time I have spent for you, all of the sacrifices I have made to be with you, all of the agonizing moments of self-deprecating introspection, you place your meager offering at my table with the guise of ignorance stitched to your face and poison melancholy dripping from your tongue, all while toasting to what the future may hold. I am more than this. I am worth more than your time. I am worth more than your energy. I am worth more than your love, but the love of anybody with the sense to give a damn about how I feel. Even after all this time, I thought it was possessive to feel longing, numbing loneliness, and the dull ache of the desire to understand or a want to believe. But now, I have come to realize that it is not at all possessive. It's just human.
Be loud, because I can't do that. All right. It took me a while to find this on Facebook, but I have it, and this is mine. To the anxiety-ridden self. When your muscles knot, tightening shoulders, cramping your neck in an ogre's hand, throttling your breath, causing your hands to sweat and your fingers fidget, remember it is just a crowd of people laughing, nothing more. Remember the raven launching from the wall, blue in the sky, flight feathers turned out to create lift, wings forward, a void contracting, then exploding, air moving forward past your face, a touch. Remember your muscles seizing is just a memory of flight. Thank you.
Thanks to those 3 readers as well. We have 2 more readers on the list, unless there's another one. Okay, they are JR first and then Mitch. Okay, great.
This is a bit of a long poem, so I might be reading it a bit fast, but I'll do my best not to slur my words, so it can be understood. And since we gave them for the videos, slight trigger warning of mentions of death, though brief. Do I tell them? Christians and Mormons believed the end of days would come when God came to collect those who believed. They would be gifted with wine aged since the first grapes were grown by Eve, since Adam never worked in the garden, feast on fine animal meat of the first deer and the first bear and the first fish that were mishmashed together into one creature the likes of which was never seen after the 4th generation of humans. Sleep in luxurious beds stuffed with cotton, fine trimmed and coiled and woven together over a century by Romans when they entered the pearly gates. See again their grandmas they lost too soon and their great-great-grandpas they never got to meet. Aztecs in Hollywood believed the end of days would come as the ancient alien gods foretold it to be, tearing apart the land and San Fran and filling the gaps with the rising waters they'd been keeping an eye on since they noticed the ice caps were melting, or those same sea levels would mass to tremendous heights and wash over the shorelines and another 100 miles into the land and drown and freeze everything over, where the heat would take control and blow up every massive volcano core and cover the ground and homes and lungs and soot and ash and to cinder away their skin, leaving alive only those who put in the effort to survive. Atheists and agnostics believed the end of days would be many millennia long after they had died. Humans would have expanded beyond the Earth and colonized Mars and Titan and Europa, then expanded further to more hospitable planets within other solar systems within the Milky Way, then expanded further beyond the galaxy to neighboring planets and systems and galaxies, in a spider's web of an expansion, an exploration and colonization, never to be caught as their sun, their great to the 972nd degree ancestor knew was their source of light, imploded to explode and consume the planets they had seen in the sky, along with their own, and ridding the universe of the memory of their solar system. None of that happened. No one in the human race knew what was going to happen, and suddenly 6 billion people were dead. No Thanos around to snap his finger, no God to come and claim his children, no ships to fill with families to abort before the sun could blow, though it never did.
They suffered an hour of gravity flipping on its head and sending water and trash and rats and men and women and children and cats and dogs and cars and trucks and trains and homes and bridges and buildings for chucking it all back down to crash and smash and splatter back on the surface. An hour of North America and Europe and Asia and Africa and Australia, dropping like flies and leaving only those who stayed inside the homes and towers that, by some miracle no one would call a miracle, never left the ground. An hour of South America overflowing with ocean currents and being dragged in and under the sea surface, leaving below Mexico the southwestern hemisphere to bridge the Pacific with the Atlantic. An hour of Antarctica not being any the wiser, and trapping the scientists and explorers and college graduates to freeze over and add to the mass of ice and snowbank over the next 2 months. The human population went from 10 billion to less than half and then spent the next 2 years having what was left as societies tried to recreate themselves to varying degrees of success that didn't work until the 8th month, and by then half the world wasn't counting the calendar anymore. 100 years since the human population is barely even a quarter of what it could have been, and not even half of what it once was. 100 years of crying and suffering and mourning and self-tormenting and social tormenting and fear-mongering and rebuilding just to see humanity become primitive again. A Mormon man spent every other day not eating or drinking and submitting his body to the community to build and rebuild homes for those who didn't have one to return to after the cataclysm, beating himself with his holy text and whipping himself with his belt and cutting his wrist with his razor before dying 2 months in, under stress and under an ironing press, and leaving a mess of blood and bone and brain for the woman he tried to put in the place of his wife, who had gone flying with his 2-year-old son and 7-year-old daughter and came back down to stay in his shoes to find when she came home from working with the self-proclaimed mayor to rebuild the city of Seattle to habitable once again, cleaning the streets of the blood pools that fought to remain, all because he believed his God had left his soul on earth, because he hadn't done enough to please him, and he became the painful and red-eyed and sobbing mess he believed God wanted him to be, to make up for the prayers and blessings and thanks he must have never sent God's way. There was no God listening in the first place. No Adam and Eve sitting in rocking chairs 10 feet apart waiting for the people to come to heaven. No heaven with an old and washed-out welcoming mat while waiting in front of rusty and crusty pearls and peeling gold gates to welcome the souls who believed. No one who believed in the real Creator, the God of the gods they had never even heard of, that sent each and every soul to the light or the dark or the afterlife or hellscape. No one to come down and protect the people who didn't have to die. Just several gods watching from above as Earth died. People don't know that. No one knows what or why anything happened anymore. Most remnants of countries don't teach newer generations. Had those before them had passed, the world's end isn't kept in recordings or records. Old religions are barely capable of bringing people together anymore, and new gods just to give an attempt of a meaning to why the world is what it is, or even less common in the new world. Most technology has been dropped from commonplace, and travel has been limited to land, planes and boats far and few between in usable conditions. Many societies and cities are debating whether or not to go to war with one another. This is a ghost of an old world. And then I come in, flying down from the sky in a spaceship no one had ever seen, expecting to see the world I had left behind, only to find it a dream, a distant dream in the eyes of today's youth. These people look to me, a human who hasn't been here for over a century, with more knowledge and strength than any collective of people on this planet could have. And they expect me to have an answer as to why the Earth became what they were born in. How do I tell them it was for nothing? How do I tell them the deities that let all of existence exist the way it exists, chaos and order and time and space and life and death, fluttered their eyes and blew their noses and cracked their foot knuckles and exhaled a breath and sighed another, and just let the earth fall out of the seams, fall out of reason, and watch for their thrones as it all tore apart? How do I tell them there's no scripture for this? The story that prophesies the flip would happen, no holy text to tell them it could have been avoided, or there was a way to undo it all, or how they were supposed to go on from there. How do I tell them their suffering was for no greater purpose? It simply happened just because it did.
I've been wanting to get into slam poetry lately, so I've got a couple that I just mostly finished, but there's a reference in here to a memorial ceremony that I spoke at, and I actually the Naomi Shahib Nye poem that was on the video was the poem that I said at that. So I thought that was cool. Not quite finished, but fire alarm, Denver hotel, 3 a.m. Fuck this place. I'm not paying them $1. Most unprofessional staff I've ever seen, says a man while he was carrying his baby down 6 flights of stairs. We had listened to a noise for a while in our room on the 6th floor when one of my girls asked what the noise was. My wife nonchalantly said, "It's a fire alarm." We finally decided to go outside. My wife scooped up our 6-year-old and my 2 teenage daughters walked down 6 flights of stairs. Outside, we watched as people awkwardly talked about how serious this might be. A man and a woman, neither could be past 20, argues. She says she's tired of his games and fucking with her mind. He says she has to be nice to him no matter what. I wonder about their relationship. How long have they been together? How often does this happen? How did he come to think that way? He was getting louder and closer to her, so I handed the things I was holding to my daughter and made my way near them. My daughter made eye contact with me, mouthed, "Be careful." I see the girl. I couldn't read her expression. She told him she was getting her things and heading to the airport. We all wandered into the lobby from whatever side door we'd come out of, and I lost them in the crowd. My girls are laughing and joking, alone at 3 a.m. and finding humor. That's how they are, though. It amazes me. I halfway loudly tell the people around me that the reason I brought them all together was to sing songs from Dear Evan Hansen. We'd seen that earlier in the evening. I'd cried most of the way through it, my daughter tan on my left, intuiting my pain, my wife on my right, not understanding. My sister probably took her own life, though we're not sure. I spoke at a memorial for one of my soccer players who hung herself after reading a text from a boy suggesting, "Why don't you kill yourself?" We're in the lobby, light and fun, as it is with my girls so often. My girls love it when I go off in my Alpine Adventure Academy voice, but they didn't think it was the right time. I don't either. 3:27. The fire department gave the all clear to re-enter the building, so we head back to our room. And that's when my night started. 3:43. I'm writing this on my phone, secretly hoping that this isn't a one-time thing, needing that alarm to go off again so I can find that girl and make sure she's okay. Wishing the alarm would sense aggressive behaviors in guys with slight accents who look like they feel inferior to everyone, who now, as I remember, look like they are so insecure they're willing to do anything to feel powerful, who reminds me of that actor in 11/22/63 who played Lee Harvey Oswald, playing with the idea of calling the front desk and reporting the disagreement to them. But they weren't sure what to do when I asked for more towels, so I don't imagine they'll know how to respond. 3:47, wishing that alarm would go off, sending us all down 6 flights of stairs again, ruining our night for the second time, and surely eliminating my girl's playful demeanor of the first time. But I'd explain how much I needed this, carrying Taya down the stairs to find this other girl. They'd understand. My 3 daughters are okay. My imagination takes me outside again, hat backward, glasses on, everyone even more angry this second time. Anger boiling just below their tired eyes. Not me though, I'm relieved, searching, telling my girls to be on the lookout. But no alarm sounds, and now I'm left with regret and imagination, not good partners. Worried that when I leave in a few hours to take Tan to the airport, instead of the flashing lights of a fire truck outside, I'll be met by an ambulance and police cars. Not sure when I'll forgive myself. 4:13, can't sleep, feeling alone in a room with my family. Then I realize that me feeling that way cheapens the situation she might be in at that moment, and I feel shame. 5:15, I dozed off. I wake to my alarm, not that alarm. Apprehensively leave to take Tan to the airport. Don't see anyone. I got one shorter one. Time for that or no?
I think so.
All right. I'm a teacher. So pretend like this is a dry erase board. This is called a sidetrack teaching my 6th graders about the 80-20 principle. Okay, let me see how to come at this. Again, I say this a lot, but when I was teaching at the detention center, I'd have discussed this But how to teach 6th graders, I'm not sure. So there was an Italian economist named Pareto who created the 80-20 rule, and it got named after him. It says that things aren't distributed evenly. What that means, how to explain this without having to explain the explanation. In a work setting, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the workers, or 80% of sales comes from 20% of the clients. In Pareto's time in Italy, 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. There are many other examples. Let me think. What I'm thinking but not saying. My oldest son is the first of 5 kids. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. He is 20% of my children, but 80% of my problems. When he moved out after high school, he took 80% of my family's problems with him, maybe more. One time he pulled a knife on me in the kitchen. His mom tried to talk him down. He'd been suicidal for a while. When she realized she couldn't help, she looked at me. I know what that look means, so I told him, put the knife down or I'm going to take it off you. With the training I have, I'll take the knife and in the process, break your arm and dislocate your shoulder, and I'm not fucking around. I don't tell my students the most important application of Pareto's principle, that when you remove 80% of the conflicts in a home, it becomes a pretty awesome place to be, like how I'd always wanted it. But I had him there. What Pareto doesn't account for is that sometimes the 80-20 is more like, I want him gone 90-10, but my wife and I are split 50-50, and he's my son. How can I feel that way? I'm a shitty father, 100-0. Nothing to distribute there. That's all I got on that one.
Thanks so much for all of you for being here tonight, and to the 4 students from my class for sharing their video poems. I wish you all the best this evening and be safe on the road. Thank you.
Thank you.